Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it is indeed time to get our talk on. This morning talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, along with the champions of talk. This morning, we've got two talk champions in the house, one here in Studio 1A, the other joining us via the modern technology of Zoom, in studio with us each and every Wednesday morning. None other than the one and only, there he is, Luis Delgado. Good morning, Mr. Lou. How are you?
Good morning, Stan. Good morning to our listeners and our viewers.
How was your weekend?
It was incredible, Stan. Once again, got a little chance to spend some time with my wife and my son. And it's always good because it brings us closer together, and we do a couple things together. Even something as small as going out for a ride is just wonderful, just to be in each other's presence. So it was great.
Absolutely. Dr. Bowen's here. How you doing there, Dr. Bowen?
Good morning.
There she is.
I had to check my mute button. You gotta make sure you're on cue. Yeah. The weekend. As I get older, I started realizing that those 48 hours go by really, really quickly. And for me, it was spending time with family. My nieces are toddlers, and they are amazing in terms of all the things that they're taking in and sharing in terms of what they've acquired as new words and things that they've seen. And I'm noticing that they are little songbirds.
All right. So what are they? They sing?
They sing. They sing on car rides. They sing when their little shows are on. One of the shows that I actually have fallen in to as well is called Gracie's Corner. And you'd be surprised the number of adults that love Gracie's Corner as much as their children do.
Gracie's Corner. I've never heard of Gracie's Corner. What's this? Is this a TV show?
It is a learning cartoon singing show for kids. But the way that they put it together, when you check it out, you'll understand why adults love this show. Because you're a music lover, so you'll understand why.
All right. Well, there's all kinds of ways that young people learn, as well as seniors and middle-aged folk. Life, as you like to say, lifelong learning. So talk to me, you guys. What's happening here, there, and around the world?
Well, I just recently found out that Secretary Cardona, our education secretary that started here in the state of Connecticut, is supposed to be making his rounds in the state of Connecticut at I think about 6 schools. And I'm interested to diving into what it is that he is able to find out per the purpose of his visit. Relatively so, changing the channel just a little bit. Last night there was a meeting held by one of the HPS committees, and the highlights were presented again, with PowerPoint presentations. However, it leaves a lot to be still questioned when it is that only snapshots of specific schools, I would say less than 5 schools are brought to the attention of the public versus the entire district's progress. And so what was mentioned by a few board members, including board member Brody, is that we should actually have a full, transparent, comprehensive overview of what's going on in each of the schools, and not just a snapshot of 2 to 3 schools based on some sampling. Because as of right now, we don't know how these schools are actually faring. Because if you're only telling me that 2 to 3 schools are doing X, Y, Z, then how is the rest of the almost 25, approximately 30, don't quote me on that, schools doing? We can't base the decisions that need to be made off of 2 to 3 schools. We need to know what's going on in the entire school district, especially from the perspective of board members, in order to make better decisions and ask the relevant questions.
So you're referring to the workshop.
Yes, the workshop that was held last night.
Okay.
I believe individuals can actually go back and see it via YouTube, Facebook, and all that good stuff. But definitely tuning into these types of workshops, presentations, committee meetings. This gets you as a community member in tune to what's going on, what's being said, and more importantly, what's not being said.
Dr. Maya,
yes,
you raise some incredible questions, because the fact that that's not being done already, should raise some eyebrows, some red flags, like they say. And then why is a board member asking about why it's not done like that? She should be making that demand that it's done like that, right? Or given the directive to the superintendent. Does she give the directive to her principals that this happened, right?
That's correct, Lou. You're tapping on the head of the nail. Okay. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. When you start to think about the roles being played in terms of the superintendent and the board of directors, which are the oversight of the superintendent, those directives should be coming directly from the president of the board in order to get the details that we're actually seeking. And obviously, with what we currently see in terms of lack of full transparency, the head or the president of the board has not made that request known and held the superintendent accountable for producing that. Because every time it is that I see either a live presentation or workshop, I'm seeing the same types of information given, superficial information given, right? And so I'm like,
you should prepare the company line.
No questions for me. It answers no questions for me, right? It's like, okay, you can show me the shiny box, but where is it that we need to dive deeper and start realizing, these are the issues and this is what we want to drill into to really start making changes. And if you're only giving me 2 to 3 schools to go by, well, I have not much to go by at all.
And they're always going to give you the higher performance schools because that's the way that they cover their behinds.
Yeah.
But,
so, it's wild.
Well, we're bringing the information forth, and to all our viewers and our listeners, you need to start making some noise. Start shaking the tree. Start making phone calls. Start making demands. And call us. Call Dr. Maya. Call myself. Call Stan and let us know what's going on. So we can open this right up.
I think you both bring up. I think you both bring up good. Bring up a good topic. So let me do the pushback just a little bit.
Okay.
Now the board says this. City council doesn't, but the board does. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting of the board held in public.
Okay.
And so I think that perhaps they're suffering from a little bit of institutional inside football kind of thing.
Some insider trading.
Well, you could say maybe some insider trading. Maybe that is a good way to think of it, because the insiders have information that you don't have, so they can always make the good trades, to the degree that is theoretically it's against the law to do it.
But the problem with that, Stan, is that they're gonna make a good trade for them, not for the community.
Right, but let me finish. So I say that to say this. Because they are constantly in contact with one another, what we see is not necessarily the underneath, because you're using several times transparency and accountability. So accountability is to hold somebody, what's the consequence for failure to deliver? Some sort of consequence. So if there isn't a consequence in terms of what we want, that doesn't mean that there isn't a consequence or that there's no accountability. I think we have to be very specific in terms of what we want.
Right.
And we have to be specific in terms of what we want before the event, not after the event. There's a load of manure on your lawn. It's the wrong lawn, but it's a little bit late now because it's there. You know what I mean? You can get it off, but why not hold them accountable for the deliverable? Should have been next door, not here. And so anytime you allow people to just do stuff, they're going to either take the path of least resistance or do what makes them look good. And so if I got to give you a show or a presentation, quote unquote, the dog and pony show, you bring out the best dog to the dog show, not the worst. How come every time they do the kennel show, they bring out the best dogs? Where's the other dogs? Where's the sheltered dogs at? Well, this show isn't about the sheltered dogs. Nobody is going to bring you the worst that they do. So the ultimate check and balance, I say this all the time, the ultimate check and balance is the public. And if the public doesn't turn out, you ain't going to hear nothing bad.
Well, here, let me push a little bit back on that, Stan. Because here's the way that I look at it. Because I have managed to learn how to look at things from my perspective and not from the company's perspective, right? So here's the thing that we should be questioning as a community, right? We have black and brown individuals that are shoring up all the stuff that Dr. Maya's talking about. They're supporting that. And then they don't expose the lies and the untruths behind that and bring forth to light the things that, because if all these underperforming schools, if we never hear about them and everything is kept undercover, then we'll never be able to do anything about it. But in terms of doing something about it, I'm not proposing money. I'm not proposing any kind of change to the education system in this country, but a complete eradication and rebuilding of it. Because anything that we do now is just supporting white privilege and racism, because that's what the system is built on. So anytime that we come up with a grand plan about how to fix it, and it has to do with throwing money at poor people, you're supporting white supremacy and racism, because that's why the system is like it is now. Every time we shake the tree a little bit, they throw a little money at us. Look at what happened at the Y on Albany Avenue. These people, these charlatans, Luke Bronin and Matt Ritter, go down there with $500,000 like they did something, instead of going down there with $25 million and saying, hey, community, we're going to build a pool here because this is what you need. So you're absolutely right, Stan. We accept all of that. But to the black and the brown people in the system, shame on you for supporting that kind of nonsense.
Well, see, I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because, and not for the reason that one might think, when one looks through the lens of race and has expectations built on that, particularly in this instance, you're going to be gravely disappointed because they're not black and brown people. They're human beings in a job.
Absolutely.
They wouldn't have the job if they weren't going to be compliant. It's the compliant few that get through. And if the expectation is because they're somehow black and brown, they're going to do what's in the best interest of black and brown people,
Nope.
you're setting yourself up for disaster. That's the ultimate flip of the script. You don't hire people based on their black and brown. You hire them on the basis of what they can do. So if I understand that all I got to do to put someone to make you happy is make them black or brown, I can buy me some more time because you got black and brown faces doing the same work. The work is what gets done. The spark plug is a spark plug is a spark plug. Doesn't matter whether it's a Champion spark plug or whatever brand. It's a spark plug. You can paint it any color you want. It still delivers a spark. If it doesn't deliver a spark, they replace it. Our spark plugs, our representatives are supposed to be representing us. Them being black or brown is sufficient for us, but it isn't enough for us. They can't just be black and brown. They have to be dedicated to your vision, your cause, your mission, or your interest. If their interest is themselves or something else, then the fact that they're black and brown means nothing. Nothing. And to expect them somehow to do differently is delusional. And I can say that almost without fear of contradiction because all the people black and brown in this system is working for who? Us? No. They're working for, I don't know who they're working for.
Mr. Charlie.
I don't know who they're working for, but they're not working for us.
Right. Let me inject something, right? So in terms of our school systems, now imagine for a second, we stripped away the colorism associated with how it is that this capitalistic society plays on us being divided and not united. Now, in regards to the educational system, because they're in the business of teaching based on education, there's a teaching aspect and there's a learning aspect. The adults are there to teach. It takes great teachers to be able to tap into the capacities that all children have to learn. Now, if we look at it from the perspective that what we find within respective systems, the lack of great teachers actually being there. Not saying that all teachers are not great. I'm saying that there are more non-great teachers in positions, mind you, that don't even like kids, teaching our kids. Now, saying that means that if based on this workshop that was premised on Harvard Public Schools achievement, which was highlighted, the two things that I took away were related to mathematics and reading literacy, right? And so they talked about a whole lot of other things in terms of breaking down specific categories of students, I guess high achievers, low achievers, and everybody in between.
That's all filler, Dr. Maya.
But wait, hold on, let me finish my thought. But the thing that I'm really starting to recognize is that if you think about all of the disciplines, where it is that a student, a young learner, is built foundationally strong in mathematics and reading literacy / comprehension, then they can go far and wide in all other disciplines. If they lack those two foundations, then they're not going to be able to excel in other areas because the foundation is weak. Now, case in point, I recently saw a really quick snippet of this young girl. She was actually a Black girl that actually was taught, and I think she was under the age of 5, how to do algebra. Now, you can't tell me that a student between the ages of, let's say, 8 to 12 cannot learn math, if you've got a 5-year-old being able to be taught how to do algebraic equations and solve for algebraic equations. So the question becomes, not are students able to learn or if they have the capacity to learn, but who's inspiring the greatness within them? Who's inspiring that confidence that they need? Who's inspiring them to go further and be exposed to as much as they possibly can? Because let's keep it 100. These kids have more access to technological devices than we ever did as we were growing up. So that means that any given point in time, they can be exposed to learning materials that expands them into higher heights. So it's not that they don't have the capacity to learn, it's what are they being exposed to and where are they being exposed to great teachers that actually reinforce their wanting to actually learn. So at some point, we have students that do not want to go to school. As a matter of fact, I saw a report stating that high school dropouts are not the biggest concern, really. It's in the 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th grades is where we're losing a lot of students. Because if it is, they are not being inspired based on understanding the relevancy of what they are being taught and how it is that it can benefit them. Then we're losing 11, 12, 13, and 14-year-olds. We're not losing so much the 16, 17-year-old base, but it's those groups that are classified as middle schoolers that we're losing.
Well,
so let me just say this, Dr. Maya. In a system that's based on racism and white privilege, there can be no great teachers, okay? Because all you're doing is reinforcing that. Let me say that first. And then in terms of what you're talking about losing them, I agree with you because the common theory is in the high schools is that if they make it through the freshman year, their chances of graduating are like 70% higher. You know what I'm saying? So when what you're saying is absolutely correct. We're losing them before they get to the high school.
Absolutely.
And that's why when they get to high school, it's easy for them to drop out because they've been on that path now for 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. You know, but let me add this to this conversation as food for thought. The human body, or all living things, have a natural, innate, defensive mechanism, okay, that activates itself. A lot of times we don't even know it. And I contest to all our viewers and all our listeners, to you and to Stan, Dr. Maya, that the reason that a lot of our black and brown kids, especially today, are pushing back and more on the school because they understand that everything about the school system is not good for them. No matter how we try to spin it. Oh, education is the only way to, whatever. We have to rethink that.
So, to the degree that, I don't know what to say about your last comment, but I was thinking in terms of something you said earlier that the system is not working, and your suggestion that it needs to be just scrapped and start over.
Yeah.
So there's an effort among many to quote unquote do something, have our own quote unquote our own schools. I've always been a big fan of home schooling. Personally, I had to be talked into sending my kids to school. And so, I did. But I was a big fan of homeschooling. My son's kids were homeschooled for the most part until they got to a certain age. my oldest son. But, if kids don't like what's going on in school, and I would say not all kids, some kids, because clearly all kids don't think this way. Otherwise, there would be no kids in school. So there are some kids who are self-selecting and deciding not to attend school. And I think sometimes the troubled kids, for whatever reasons that there's trouble in their life, trauma, this, that, and the third, the laundry list is big. I'm not trying to diminish the laundry list, but whatever the issue is for this cohort of individuals who doesn't like school, doesn't come to school, we hear many of the things that we're talking about, being attributed to why they're not there. But a lot of kids are in school.
Right.
But if you think about, I'm trying to try to thread a needle here that's kind of complicated. And so I'll try not to make it overly complicated. If we think about what Louis was saying earlier and what you were saying, if there is an effort to diminish young people's capacity to demonstrate their wisdom, their knowledge, if you have a 5-year-old who can learn algebraic equations, right? Yet you have kids who are in algebra, can't gain command of the subject matter, don't know how to process stuff, then it would seem that you need a willing student, because the primary learner in the learning situation is the student, but you also need a dynamic teacher.
Absolutely.
I don't believe that teaching is something you should be able to do simply because you want to do. I think that teaching is a calling. It is a gift. Everyone cannot teach, and everyone should not be allowed to be in the classroom. That's just me. That's just me. I can't say that. And so I say that additionally, that if the quote unquote racist systemic system is designed to be against us, then look at the states that shut schools down and the states that left schools open, and rethink some of the equation as to who is for us and who's against us. Because students' forward progress was definitely impacted by shutting schools down. And during the time the schools were shut down, according to the statistics, the students that fared worse were inner city kids. And so if you have quote unquote black and brown people negatively impacted so that they are not learning and become uncompetitive in any environment, the place that was most impacted is in urban America.
So Stan, let me ask you, where did you get that statistic about? Because those little words about inner city and urban, those are all catchphrases.
Those are catchphrases
for black and brown.
Right.
So
that's why I'm using them.
So the reason that I'm asking is where you get those statistics, because I worked in the system during the height of the pandemic. And my experience was that kids that did really good in school, not all of them, but some of them, during the pandemic when they had to learn from home, they didn't do as good as they were in school. And then some of the kids that were struggling greatly in school, not all of them, but some of them did quite well during the pandemic and learning from home. So the question that I would introduce into this conversation is, who is giving those stats, right? And what is their interest in these stats? Because if you ask the baseball Major League Baseball, the people who run it, is Major League Baseball a racist organization, they're probably going to say no, and they can even give you some statistics to show that they're not.
Right.
But our experience as black and brown people, we know that those statistics are wrong. So once again, who is giving those statistics that you talked about, and what is their interest in the game?
So,
and this question is not necessarily for you.
I understand.
For the listeners, for Dr. Maya, the audience, everybody.
Right, but the one thing you said now, so there are instances where kids are doing well.
Many.
Right, I'm just reconciling some of the things you're saying.
Yeah.
Because earlier you said that there's nowhere, the system is there. You can't learn in the system. I think you can.
No, I'm saying that they're teaching our kids. See, Stan, the problem is this. That a lot of the information that you and I learn and that our kids are learning is false. Right off the rip.
So it's not that they don't learn, it's
right.
what they're learning.
It's what they're learning, right. And then it keeps them in a slave-like perpetuity because we're learning lies. We're teaching our kids that white people are great. They discovered this country. They opened it up. Without white people, we wouldn't be alive. That's basically what they're being taught, right? So we're saying, people like me were saying, listen, that's not true. Let's put it all down. Let's put down the so-called great accomplishments of white people. Let's put them down because they did happen. But let's put down our accomplishments also.
I have an interjection.
Yes.
When I was growing up, I never. Here's where the play on us being in the educational system versus everything that we're presented by media, right? Basically, in education, what they present us is what they have in terms of the materials and the books that they provide for us. Now, I was never told explicitly that white people were to be the standard. On TV and in other media, you would see the standard being white people being displayed as the norm, the go-to for beauty and all this stuff. However, we live in a day and age where, if I'm correct, that's not explicitly being said that white people are the standard. Our kids are smart enough to understand that as black and brown people, we ourselves have a culture that is supposed to be embraced by self first, right? And so identifying the standard within society, even if it's implicitly prescribed as being white in terms of standards for class and beauty, a lot of individuals, especially black and brown people, are not subscribing to that whatsoever. So I might have a white teacher, or I might have all white teachers. That does not make them the standard. However, here's where the rubber meets the road. Where it is, I'm in a classroom or multiple classrooms along 13 years, and I never am met with a black or brown teacher. I have no example of setting my sights per se on being a teacher because I see teachers as being white. Now, that's implicitly. However, if I believe that I want to make a difference and make the change I seek to see, then as a student, I would aspire to become a teacher so that I could represent black and brown individuals in the classroom, because at the point where all I got exposed to were white teachers, then I make that difference. So, in fact, our students are smart enough to see that the okie doke in terms of representation is being played out before them. However, what we have to start really realizing is that it takes the community, which consists of parents, guardians, grandparents, aunts, uncles, everybody, to actually start communicating what it is that they would like for their school system or their school to be presenting to their kids. Make your request known. Otherwise, An unasked question goes unanswered. So we've got a lot of different things that we can actually be using in terms of communication of what we expect and making requests known. But for some reason, we stay muted, but love to complain. If you're going to complain and not ask for what you're requesting, you might as well cease with the complaining. You have to switch up that whole modus operandi and start writing down, okay, I would like to see this. I would like to see this. Why is this not being presented? Or just think about complaining as being something that's pushed out the window. Because at this point, you have to make your request known. You see what's not going right, but how are you going to be the voice to request for things to be righted is where we're at. So racism as it is, we're all here. We got to be here together. We got to do this together somehow, some way. But if it is that you never say anything about it, then what you're doing is you are co-signing on what you currently see. Stop co-signing on it. You want to co-sign on a loan when you know that that individual won't pay their debt. Just saying.
Beautifully stated, Dr. Maya. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful feedback.
No problem. All right. So, I start to, really double back in regards to just thinking about, first of all, the deconstruction of a system in order to reconstruct something that's correct. Well, we haven't even begun to actually establish what the standards are in terms of us as a group being able to reconstruct something that's going to work, right? So because we have the system that we currently have, how do we work within this system? We have to be able to work within this system in order to have some changes to actually come about. Let's put it this way. It's not going to get deconstructed anytime soon, not in my lifetime. So with the individuals that find themselves currently in places of leadership positions that can make these changes, do you have their ear? Now, here's the thing. When it is that a leader will not listen to its constituents, there lies the problem. Because if it is that you're bringing these things up consistently and you're not being heard as the constituent, there's one thing that needs to be done. Swap out the leadership. And if it is that you do that through your vote, then go and vote to get new leadership that is going to give an ear to what needs to be done based on your suggestions. And then they should be able to work out what it is that needs to be done within their purview of their position. It's not even rocket science. But if you never make it known, then nothing's ever going to come about it. And all I've been hearing over the past 30 years is womp, 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 womp. Complaining never gets resolutions. Resolutions are gotten when it is that the communication of expectations and standards are presented, and if received and acted upon by leadership, then that's where the change comes about.
And you said something interesting, Dr. Maya, that I want to build on, and that is that that's a system that has been used to curtail any movement, and it's called, and there's a name for that. It's called complaining and compliance, because our people will complain a little bit, but then they comply.
Compliant, you'll get through.
They go along, and and then there's another system, right, that also has been used by white people. These are all learned behaviors. Black and brown people in this country have been taught to play along to get along.
Yes.
And those are two systems.
It's psychological warfare.
Those are systems. Yes, sister. Yes.
So think about it. If you and I sat down to play a game of chess, we're thinking about strategies that we're going to use in order to checkmate the other player. Okay. And so when it is that you start to look at this broader system, Think about all the psychological strategies that are actually being used. We know that Black people purchase X, Y, and Z and why they purchase it, right? Because they like that high value, shiny stuff. Now, on the opposite end, if it is that you know that you will become wealthy by living within your means because you have been socialized and schooled on the process of being wealthy by not purchasing unnecessary things, then you're going to do opposite. So a lot of what we have in society as Black and brown people, yes, we've learned from white people. That's 100. But at what point in time do we decide individually and then gather amongst like-minded people collectively to do things that are opposite of what has always been the norm? We have a choice in the matter. If we're not making a choice, we can't blame the white people. The choices that you make today based on the things that need to be done in your life, that's not a white people decision. That's a Maya, Lou, and Stan decision. And so we find ourselves here. Yes, we've been influenced. That is without a doubt. Okay, so now what? Are we going to say, oh, I'm going to go by the standard because that's the standard? Did you decide on what your standard is? You make the standard according to how it is that is going to best benefit your life.
Based on your interests, yeah, absolutely.
That's where we find the rubber hitting the road. Individuals cannot continue to blame outside influences for where it is that they find themselves. There's a lot of stuff that we are not under our control, but what we can control, we should be in control of. And if we're not in control of that, it does us no good in trying to seek external forces in terms of having them be the blame for where we find ourselves, when it is us ourselves that make those decisions that always come down to some type of outcome or consequence. So if you made the decision to cross the street while it was a green light and you get hit by the car, it's not because white people made you do it. It's because you did not follow the rules of crossing the street, period.
But I'm still gonna blame it on white people because
they wrote
the law. They wrote the law that says that there's a crosswalk you can walk across.
Listen, listen.
But listen, Dr. Maya.
The car's coming. No, green light and the car coming.
I'm just kidding, man.
No, he's not.
But you were today. You were phenomenal. You're right on.
That's problematic, too.
You're on the money today, Dr. Maya.
Semi. I'm not crossing the street in a semi. Got the green light to go.
Yeah, I get that.
Look both ways.
Look, yeah.
Right? That's what I'm gonna do, Lou.
I get that, Dr. Maya, but your commentary today is excellent, and I think that a lot of us can learn from that and grow from that. So I want to thank you for that. It's outstanding today. Thank you, Dr. Maya.
Just because something's on the menu doesn't mean that's what you have to order. Everything that's on the menu is in the restaurant. There's no reason why you can't pick what you want and put your meal together. So my big thing is I don't really need to see the menu other than to know what's on there, because the menu will jam you up, because there's nothing on the menu I want. Not in the way they want to serve it. I would like a little of this, a little of that, and a little of this. So, the menu can be like a buffet, or it can be, well, you can only get a baked potato with this and that. Well, don't say anything. Let's not make a big scene. Just order what's on the menu, so we go along to get along, even though it's not what you want. And then you're paying, and then you expect to leave a tip afterwards, and the service was bad.
That's a horrible example, Stan, that you would use those words.
Well, food means something to me. I think that it's a great example.
No, I'm saying to go along and play along, play along and get along.
Well, but they do if you order something off the menu that you don't really, like, but you're there with a group of people. Oh, here we go. You got to take your time. No. This is what I want. Well, the same thing in education and schools as she's suggesting. We are the ones who have to make the demands. Ultimately, we're the customer. We're the customer. It doesn't matter what the restaurant owner or the superintendent or the board of ed or its manager, the superintendent, want to serve us, it's up to us to make the demands and they will comply. What happens is when we don't say anything, then they give us what they think we need. And then they support their decisions with all kinds of data and all kinds of this, that, and the third. And we were looking at this model and we got that. And here, meanwhile, what you really want, you're not getting. And as a result, kids are not going to school. This is what I'm hearing. And so it's up to us to make the demands on what we want. And if we don't get it, then you replace the people who are standing in your way. That's what they do in the outer lands.
So Stan, let me make 2 quick comments. Mm-hmm. When I talk about our children, I'm talking about spiritually our children feel that school is not a safe place for them. You know, I keep talking about this subject all the time, how unwelcoming our schools are. But going back to what we're talking about, Stan, Dr. Maya makes a great point every week. And you also, when you say that this show is not about just complaining, but also, providing information for people to entertain. So I want to put a little spin on that. I'm a little different. I like to bring situations or stuff that's going on in the community. And I have some ideas about what changes could look like in some instances. Mm-hmm. And in others, I'm completely baffled because I don't have any experience in that, right? But I think that I like to present these issues and these situations to our listeners and our viewers because a lot of times the feedback that we get from them is simply spectacular.
That's true.
In terms of, wow, I didn't think about that. Wow, I didn't know that was happening. So, to piggyback on what Dr. Maya says, I also want to remind the viewers and the audience that we also would love to hear from you. Some feedback on whatever we talk about or some great idea or something that you think could be of benefit. Because another thing that I challenge us is to create something from a black and brown perspective without any European influence. And we really don't know what that looks like, Dr.
That's going to be hard.
So, but we can do it. Mm-hmm. We have the mind. We have the power to do that.
Start small.
Right. And so now, here's the thing about education. See, education for white people is a money-making venture. Right?
Everything is.
But hold on, sister. Education for us, for me, for you as a parent, it should be about the development and growth of our children. Without money being the primary factor.
This is true, but
that's my contribution. That's all I'm saying.
Let me interject.
Yes.
Let me interject. Here's where the rubber meets the road again. Now, we are in a system that is capitalistic and money driven. If it is that we are teaching our kids, our black and brown kids, what we need to teach them, they also have to be able to operate in this system as well, because they're going to get run over and managed by individuals that don't give a hoot and nanny about them as individuals, because it's all about the money. Now we can't make the system be holistically for us. However, taking the dynamics of the system that as they present themselves and then adding our own touch to it in order to prepare them for the society that we have all been born into. So we didn't say, you know what, I think it's my time to be born. Beat me down, Scotty. No, right? So with that being said, we need to give our kids as much of the truth that we have regarding how to navigate this societal journey. Because without knowing the players in a particular system and how they operate, not based on emotion, but based on monetary gain, that right there allows for them to be prepared more often than not to navigate this system with resources that we've added to their toolbox so that they have the tools to utilize them in a society that creates many different types of ways to make money, even from the perspective that people themselves, in terms of going into the criminal justice system, are the cotton, that new resource whereby they make money. So if it is that we can keep our kids out of the criminal justice system, now that right there would be monumental, because what happens there is that we now begin to allow for our kids to not be a part of that system per se, where they can make the money off of criminalizing our youth for long, unjustified terms or sentences that even if they get out, it's still a life sentence. Now that right there is mind-boggling, but that's the strategy that's out there. So how do we get our kids not to dive into that particular system when it is that they haven't gotten the tools to understand that every decision that they make has a consequence? For example, recently, a young Bristol kid broke into a house and he got charged with all kinds of different things. But what would make that young man think that that was okay to do? Right? It starts here. You can't make not nary a move without first thinking about it, whether or not it be ethical and moral or criminal in nature.
Dr. Maya, you once again, you're right on the money. This full moon retrograde has enlightened you greatly, sister. It's wonderful to hear you say that, especially the part about adding our flavor to whatever in order to be able to manifest and to traverse these systems that we all know are designed to work against us. So yes, absolutely, I'm complete, accordance with you.
We have a lot of power in the circles that we travel in, and by us utilizing that power to educate others, and hopefully those others take it in consideration, the value of that information / education, then that allows for us to bridge many gaps and allow for a less tumultuous journey through these other spaces. Now, interestingly enough, here's something I'd like to point out in terms of being an instructor / teacher / educator. Now, Lou, imagine you have a class of 20 students. With that class of 20 students, you are sharing some very valuable gems. Here's my question to you, Lou. Have you only impacted those 20 students, or have you impacted those 20 students and everybody that they actually come in contact with that might share your gems that they got from you?
Everybody.
That's what I'm saying.
Everybody.
It doesn't impact. So check this out. Conversely, a teacher that has impacted those 20 students in a negative way, if that negative way is then something that those students then express to other individuals in their circle, then they too have impacted in a negative way other individuals. So,
but not as many. I agree, but not as many. Because now it comes to a point of making choices, and most people can determine a lot of times when they hear something good. And unfortunately, most people a lot of times cannot determine when they hear something bad, and they'll go along with it. But some people will say no.
Mike, they use this new term. Where did this come from? This probably came from something long time ago, but more recently, microaggressions. These microaggressions are not microaggressions. These are aggressive ways of using words as well as actions.
Well, they weaponize their whiteness. Right? That's all it is.
It's a crazy dynamic, because think about this. For the reasonable person, when it is that you use your words or if you do something, you know whether or not it's going to impact somebody in a negative way. For the reasonable person, you know the use of your words could impact somebody in a negative way when you use said words.
Well, let white people define it, it's going to be a microaggression. But if you let me define it, it's going to be a racist attack.
So what is a microaggression?
A microaggression is a personal racist attack where it's not overt. You know, like somebody, it could be something as simple as one of your colleagues walking by and calling you the N-word.
That's
well, because
I would consider that.
No, because
I don't know. That don't sound like a microaggression.
Right, but because of the way that it's presented. You know, he's walking by you privately saying, or she's saying something like that to you.
Oh, I see.
But if they called you that from across the room, then that would be considered a macroaggression, because this is white people defining it. And, you know, there's a brother that makes a great point. I mentioned his name a couple times. Mm-hmm. And he talks about that. And his example was ADHD. He said, what is ADHD? He said it's words with a definition. And why do white people get to give that word that definition? What is our input in that word? And so we have to think, because sometimes words, Stan.
Words always mean things.
Well, they mean things, they mean different things, and it depends when they're used. Like, you know, the N-word, if you look the N-word up in the dictionary, it says something like a mean, dirty person or something, right? But when white people use that term against us, they're reminding us that they don't think we're human beings.
Well, there are a lot of terms like that that people have. So what, Dr. Bowen, define a microaggression?
Absolutely. I was waiting for you to ask me to do that, because you know I'm using my technology to do this. So according to the Oxford Dictionary, a microaggression is a statement, action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic minority.
So if I was a student, if I was a student at school, mm-hmm. a black student at school, mm-hmm. and the white counselor would say to me, now your people don't really do good at doctoring. You should think about being a secretary. Now that would be would that be considered a microaggression?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because in the environment that it happened,
mm-hmm.
remember, if it's like a private thing like that, but if he said it to you in front of other people, then that would be considered a macroaggression, because there's a bigger audience now. So
now check this out. I'm going to use that example right there in terms of black student, white counselor.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you're in education, you should not make a statement like that, because if it is that you really and truly want to see the best occur in terms of opportunities being presented, you should never minimize what it is that a person could possibly be. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that we have individuals in education that will minimalize or try to discredit or use historical thinking that they've been passed along to from generation to generation to come at a black student as if they don't have the wherewithal to go above and beyond what was suggested as the quote unquote typical type of position that they should be pursuing. That's an insult and that's disrespectful. And for that individual to think that way and present it to that student means that more often than not, our Black and brown students come across these individuals. However, a good thing to actually keep in mind, young people, for the most part, do not know how to communicate in general those types of interactions that occurred in a school environment to either their parent, guardian, or another adult that they trust. Now, for all that has not been said by our youth, based on what they're confronted with throughout their 13-year journey in this educational system, imagine if they gave voice to every type of quote unquote microaggression that they came in contact with. Imagine. And for those that do speak up, and if any adult discredits a child, shame on you, because these kids are experiencing things that, and if they bold enough and brave enough and courageous enough to say it, by golly, take them for their word and do the work and do the investigation, because they're most likely telling the truth.
So, Dr. Maya, here's what I would add to this conversation. Shame on every Black and brown education ever, okay? Up to this point right now, for not speaking up. Let me just put that out there right now, okay? Because our students and our families need a voice. You know what I'm saying? So the other thing that I would add to this conversation is to piggyback on a great point that you make. And I think that the reasons that our students or our children don't know how to communicate those type of actions is because we do a terrible job of educating them in terms of those terms. What is a microaggression? Our students face micro and macroaggressions by the hundreds every single day. Don't kid yourself. Hundreds.
That's my point.
Every single day.
That's my point.
So what I would introduce is that we have to do a better job. You know how we have the conversation, right, about the police, the conversation that we keep, white people keep saying, what's the conversation that we have with our kids when they're engaged by the police? Then we should also have conversations about what things look like. Hey, if this kind of stuff happens to you in school, this is we call it a racist attack. But white people call it a microaggression.
But it could also be from, it's not limited to race. Right. Because if you have a black and brown teacher who's doing the same thing,
but it's still
a microaggression.
Absolutely, because that's learned behavior.
Right. I just want to make sure that it's not only that people don't think that if it's not coming from someone who's, if it's outside of a racial context, it's somehow not microaggression.
No, absolutely. And but here's the thing too, that like I said, we have to do a better job of protecting our children by educating them on the things that they're going to face outside. I never expected my children to know anything that I didn't personally teach them. So when I went to school and my son wasn't doing good in social studies, I never blamed the teacher. I made it a point to get a little bit more involved so he could learn to navigate that. So we continue to do a better job. And let me just say this. The black and brown staff that display that type of behavior, they're defending racist policies, policies that discriminate, policies that offend, policies that are criminal, but they're afraid to call them that. So I'm shame on you, but I'm not saying it. I'm calling you out so you can change it. Okay? If you know that there's some racist policies, if there's racist teachers, if there's racist policies, speak out. We don't have to accept that anymore.
Lou, that's easier said than done. And
Absolutely.
I'll point to the fact that, Stan brings this up all the time. that individuals, in terms of self-preservation is something that they're going to look at in terms of, having to pay their bills and, the livelihood that comes about and being a whistleblower and all that stuff. So, individuals try to tread lightly, even though, an injustice is being done or multiple injustices are being done. That self-preservation thing is going to be at the forefront of their mind. They got mouths to feed, including themselves. They got to keep a roof over their head. And so if they blow the whistle, what's going to become of their life and livelihood?
You get fired.
Right? So here's the thing, though. Everything that you're saying is right on point. But at the point where we're in a society that would think this type of stuff is okay, right? So why can't I just go to work and just not harm nobody? And I know I said it wrong Englishly, grammatically, but why is it that we can do no harm? Why are we always being confronted with the potentiality of something that is a injustice being presented to others? Why is that? Now, if we take it to the nighttime show, because sin abounds, but come on, people, we need to do better. I mean, can't we just make sure that as a society, we're getting what we need to get done collectively? Yes, money plays an aspect of it, but at some point in time, let's check this out. At some point in time, this currency that we know is currency is going to turn digital, and it's going to be turning into something really, really crazy when it turns all digital and you can't exchange dollar for dollar, coin for coin. I'm just putting that out there. But again, just do no harm. That's it. It's not rocket science. If I step on your toe by mistake, I will apologize. If I do it and I didn't know that I did it, I should not be offended by you bringing it to my attention. What's wrong with folks? Get it together. We got to do better. If we're not willing to do better, our kids are watching us. So check this out. When it is that all that has happened in Congress, Trump, Obama, all that, our kids are watching them as adults and saying, oh, if they can get away with it, why can't I? So if they are watching us model the way, how dare we get upset with them when they do what it is that we already showed to be quote unquote okay by modeling it before them? Stop blaming these kids for this stuff. It's us that they're taking the lead from.
Well, that's exactly my Dr. Maya. What a wonderful segue into a point that I've been making, and there's been pushback from people. I'm not going to mention anybody. There's been pushback, but I've been saying all along that because we have a criminal mayor who supports a criminal police chief, because right now, as far as I'm concerned, and a lot of citizens that I've spoken to, some elders and some neighbors, we have a runaway police department. Let me give you this scenario. 2 detectives go to West Hartford. They leave their job while on duty to accost a couple African-American young men who were selling stuff, fundraising for their football team. The wife called that there was some black kids on the street. These guys, these officers, criminals to me, leave their job in Hartford and go to West Hartford to accost these kids and come back to Hartford. Why do they still have a job?
That's a good question, so but that happened some time ago.
But I'm just saying. Right. So now we have a detective in Hartford, in Waterbury, gets involved in a shooting, doesn't tell Waterbury police, doesn't tell Hartford police until some people do some work and they find out that he was involved.
Yeah, people generally don't, whether they're cops or regular people, they don't admit to shooting folks.
Well, here's the point. We have a police chief who was involved in a serious car accident because some damage was done to some state property. Never reported it. Never got charged with leaving the scene of the crime. The mayor said he was all set, like he was the judge, jury, and executioner. You know, we have outlaws running our city. So when our citizens behave like outlaws, Dr. Maya, it's because that behavior is being modeled by the so-called leadership.
Well,
I've been making this point all along. There has been pushback.
Well, I'm about to push back a little bit.
Yeah, but you were one of the people that pushed back.
With the scenario put out, you can't have it both ways, Lou.
Listen,
now, no. When Dr. Bowen suggested that 20 people hear a good thing from a teacher or an individual, do they affect more than the 20 people you see? Yes, absolutely. They affect everybody. Those words go from that 20 people to whoever they talk to. Then she said, now, conversely, on the negative, and you said no, less. Because people know when something is right or wrong. Now, if we know that shooting people is wrong, if we know that leaving your workplace to go take care of other personal business, Harvard had a fire chief that did that and he lost his job. Remember? He went out to his wife's art shop in Bloomfield on company time.
Yeah, but there was some domestic violence involved.
No, it was not no domestic violence involved. He was just at the shop. He wasn't. Okay, long story short. Now we have a cop goes, his wife calls him. Most men I know, your wife call you and you got the capacity to go roll up there, but he was wrong. Thody hit some guardrails, this, that, and the third. They took care of it, yada, bada, bing. Now, all three of these folk, all these things are wrong. Now, the right-minded person can see those are wrong things. I'm not going to use those as my standard, and now I'm going to go and get away with wrong. And so that's my only pushback, that those guys are not the stellar example of how to behave. I think that the bigger picture is these are things you don't do, not these are things that you go and do. So to me, that's not a good example of modeling behavior unless you're a criminal,
right?
And want to, I need to tighten up my criminal game. Because if a criminal might think, just like if you in prison, you in prison to get better, but no, I went to school in prison because I learned how to rob a bank, I learned how to break in the safe, I learned how to cut this, so depending upon who the individual is, I think that there's better reasons for their departure to happen than their bad role models. They're just not doing a good job. So that's my pushback.
So, here's the thing that I would add to that. I would be in agreement with you if they weren't police officers, because they take a vow to uphold, and so the right thing for all of these officers would have been, and for Luke Bronin to resign, or to turn themselves in.
That's not gonna happen.
Right. So that's why we can't have them, because they don't have any honor.
There's very few.
In order for you to be a good police officer, the first thing you need to have is personal honor. Not honor about being a police officer.
Lou,
that's different.
You really sit here saying that?
Yes.
Here's my thing. Here's where I stand. Right.
That's the expectation.
You would think that if I'm going to be a public servant, and this is the lofty utopian view.
Absolutely.
So, as a public servant, as a politician, I should have ethics and morals to go with the position. Now, we all know in our non-utopian society, that is not the case. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. The issue that I have is that if you go into a court situation where these public servants and politicians are being accused of something, or they're accusing a constituency of something Why is it that they are now put on this pinnacle where they have all the ethics and morals, where they would never lie on stand, put their hand on the Bible type situation? Are you serious right now? So how is it that I'm seen as ethical and moral in a court of law, yet outside of this court of law, I'm lying, stealing, cheating, and doing everything else that I could possibly do as long as I don't get caught? And if I do get caught, because it is of my status within society, I might not get the book thrown at me. Where's the disconnect?
Right.
Right? It's crazy. So take away, this is what I think should actually happen. And I think somebody actually alluded to this in terms of being accounted for in terms of justice. Now imagine for a second, the criminal court system, all court systems, presented to the judge and the jury, not the race and ethnicity or gender of the individual, only the facts related to the crime. Everybody gets the same type of penalty, because I don't know what you look like. I don't know your name. I don't know anything about you besides the fact that you did the crime. That's where justice becomes truly blind. And when it is that we see the outward appearance of individuals and take that as the deciding factor of how we're going to hand down a judgment, that's where injustice actually occurs, which means that justice is truly not blind.
Oh, justice is not blind, and for some, there is no justice. It's just the illusion of justice. The courts are not like this sacrosanct place where people are of high moral value. They're just another branch of the same government. And so, in theory, the different branches keep each other in check. But in reality, the only ones that have power to keep government in check are the constituents, particularly in a representative republic like we live in the United States. The government is ours. It's not theirs. We're the government. They're our representatives, and we let them get away with all kinds of crime, and we don't hold them accountable like we should. We should be holding these guys accountable. I don't expect police officers. It would be nice if they were upright and moral, but they're human.
Right.
And I don't put a superhuman. I have no superhuman expectations for people who are in positions of leadership. There is an expectation that they will do their job, and some of them will separate themselves from the pack by being extraordinary. But I'm not looking for them to be extraordinary. I'm looking for them to do their job. And just like if somebody you would hire, you expect them to do their job. Now, you might have that extraordinary employee. You give them rewards, bonuses, raises, promotions because they're extraordinary. But you hired them to do a job. You didn't hire them with the expectation of being a superhuman being. Now, you're going to give somebody a tremendous power and authority to have a baton, a deadly weapon, and to be sanctioned by the society to use the deadly weapon in the course of your job, should you deem it necessary. I do expect that individual is going to be law abiding. There's a different standard to that. I do agree that they should be not above the law, but they should duly represent the law. So to whom much is given, much is required. If you violate the law in any way, you should be terminated. That comes with the territory. You understand that when you sign up for the job. If you don't follow good practices, policies, and procedure in fighting a fire with an aggressive interior attack, you not following procedure will wind up in your death. Firefighters know that. Your life is on the line. You and the rest of your fellow firefighters. But your own life is on the line when you go into a burning building in order to save the structure. So there's not a lot of wiggle room for you to be playing around. Police officers got lots of wiggle room. And I think we give them too much wiggle room. We allow that to happen. If you have a mayor who hires a police chief, and the police chief reports to the mayor, he has certain protections by state statute. But if the police chief reports to the mayor and the mayor serves at the pleasure of the people, you have city council people who sit on public safety committees. The public safety committee has authority and some oversight over the police department, particularly when it comes to budgeting. If these people don't do their jobs, you can vote them out of office. So, I have at this point less of a problem with the police chief and more of a problem with the folks who have oversight of the police chief, because he's not going to quit. So he can be terminated. So who has terminating power? We have had superintendents in this city get terminated. Take the rest of your contract and go have a better life. Yeah. But you're not going to have it here. Bye. We same thing can happen to the police chief. It can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
We are the ones that are allowing that to happen. We're the ones that allow that to happen. Now, I've been very vocal about the police chief. I've been vocal about the mayor. I don't go on and on and on about it because, my stuff is well documented. 12 years ago, I was marching in front of MDC calling for direct election and representation of MDC commissioners. In the paper this week, the Teflon chairman, William DeBella, is under fire. I was calling for him to be gone 11 years ago. I mean, how
he doesn't even live in Hartford. Well, he really runs Hartford. He's the real mayor.
Okay, so now once we start peeling back the layers of the onion, now we understand why things are the way they are. Even if he's the real mayor of Hartford, the constituents are the ones with the real power. And if that's why I call Hartford a plantation. And we have
plantation owners.
In order to own a plantation, you have to have folk on it. We're the new cotton. The plantation is being very, very productive. It yields the only crop that it's necessary to harvest, and that is votes. And the people vote for the same leadership over and over again. And as long as they do, the leadership is allowed to do whatever it wants. Because along with being in office, along with being in power, comes the tremendous piggy bank and the capacity to direct contracts, the capacity to direct hundreds of millions of dollars, billions over the course of years to friends, family, and special interests. That is the game that's being played, and we enable that game to be played by the fact that we keep voting the same people who do us wrong into office over and over and over again. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science at all. You put the same recipe into the pan and put it in the oven, the same cake will come out every time. And not until you change the recipe do you expect to have something different. The recipe hasn't changed. People talk about change. They might add a little sugar to the top of the cake, put a little chocolate chips in there, but it's still the same cake.
So Stan, you make some very interesting comments, right? So here's a question that I asked all the Hartford politicians, and they got really mad at me. Some of them were ready to get physical with me. Why is Mark DeBella, a white man that's never lived in Hartford, the chairman of the Democratic Town Committee? Black and brown people had a very, very negative response. When I was in New Britain, I called out the superintendent for hiring her daughter and the assistant superintendent's son for jobs that they didn't qualify for and had no experience. And I contended that those jobs could have went to two black people, black and brown people. It would have changed their life, right? More black and brown people were mad at me. No black or brown person supported me at all in New Britain. They were mad at me that I spoke ill of the superintendent. According to them, I was just stating facts. Okay, So
The machine.
that's what happens to whistleblowers.
The machine.
You know, but when you ask these questions, so when you go to the polls, you have to ask, why does Doug McCrory support Mark DeBella? What does Manny Gonzalez? What do all these politicians?
That's interesting.
And then when we go to the polls, we have to remember who we're supporting. White supremacy and racism. We have to call it what it is. We have to stop saying, oh, the Democratic Party. No, those are racist institutions. That's what we have to call them.
People get mad because
You say the truth.
Right. People get, if they're getting mad, it's not, if they're getting mad, it's because they're part of the machine. They're part of the machine. It's not a matter of whether they're black or brown. They're part of the machine. And so if I stick your foot with a pen, your mouth will respond, and perhaps your hands around my little narrow neck. Right? Because why are you sticking me in my foot with a pen, Stan? And then now I have to come up with a really good answer real quick, because your foot is connected to your whole body. Now, these people are connected to the machine. If you attack any part of the machine, they will come to its defense. It doesn't matter that they're black or brown. They can't get in those positions if they're not going to be part of the machine. And the ones that do don't stay there long, or they're silenced, or they're relegated to some little isolated place. Hartford had a third registrar of voters. You remember that? The working families.
Yeah, I remember that.
Now, the Democrats and the Republicans had offices at City Hall. Their offices were like kind of next door to each other.
Yeah. They're in the same office.
Same office.
Different rooms.
They built a whole little structure for her. They put a little room with a door, and they dared her almost to come out. They boxed her into this little place, and they wouldn't let her operate because she wasn't part of the system. And she always pushed back until finally she was what? Gone. That's what happens if you're not going to be part of the machine. So the machine always protects itself. It's never going to come against the machine because it is dependent on the machine. So those who are entrapped and subjugated become so inured that they will do whatever they have to, up to including risking their own lives to protect the very system.
Or taking somebody else's.
Well, I always joke that you're not ready for prime time running for office unless you're willing to throw your grandmother off the roof. Now, if you do that for the team,
you all in.
Then you're in. We can depend on you. Will you lie for the team? Will you take one for the team? That is what you're up against.
I want to introduce a thought, Stan, for our listeners and our viewers. Creating something, something like a political machine system, whatever.
A new machine
that is completely independent of the old machine.
Well, there's someone that tried that. It's not working out too well for him.
Who's that?
Donald Trump.
No, he didn't try. He didn't try that. He just tried the same old racist stuff, man.
It may be racist, but he's a white man in a white world working in a white system. But he is not part of the machine. And the machine is doing everything imaginable to crush him and make sure that no one else ever tries that again.
You forgot one thing.
What's that?
He's going to a white jail.
There you go. Built for people who think that they have the capacity to take over the machine. You're not. The machine doesn't care who you are. Yeah. It doesn't care who you are. You know. And part of the white supremacy presupposes that all of the white folks are working together when they are not. You know, they're at each other's throats. It's not like this is one big happy family working for the good of the whole.
But
you know, it may be, let's get rid of the black folk, or we're not letting them in. You know, it's like your whole family feuding internally, cutting each other, stabbing each other in the back. They don't do so publicly, and then let someone from outside the family attack anybody, and they come together like they've been best. Family's always been tight the whole time. You need anything, cousin, I'm here for you. Right? What? That was my cousin. One-Eyed Billy was my cousin, and you did him wrong. My whole family's gonna come down on you off the mountain, right? So the whole family descends on them. Now, once we kill the enemy, they go back to being enemies themselves. So it's not like there's this big, you know, we may be the recipients of you know, disdain, but that doesn't mean those who have the common disdain against us have each other's best interest. So Donald Trump being white doesn't make any difference. He is an outsider to the system, trying to create a system within a system to come against the system, quote unquote, the swamp. It is not working well because the machine will not sit idly by and let you come up against it. It just doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. They will crush you. The only way that works is if the machine you have is a paper tiger that's never been tested. And that seems to be what we're seeing with Russia. You know, the big bad wolf that isn't.
So, Stan, I just want to quickly move over to another conversation that is of interest to us in terms of understanding how it can affect us. The governor's race. They're saying that Governor, what's his name?
Lamont.
Governor Lamont is ahead 10 points against the guy who's running against him, who has the Stefanowski, who has the Confederate war song as his introduction. He's only 10 points ahead. So we know how white people feel about that in this state. If he's only 10 points behind, that alone should make them cringe that he's playing, whether he knew it or not. Right?
You're talking about his one commercial.
Yeah,
I looked at that commercial. I looked at that commercial. I think we both found out about that commercial from the same person. You have to see the whole commercial. It really is. On the surface, if you just listen to the fact that the song is there, what he's actually doing is saying that Lamont is he's
a racist. Because you have to be saying that to play that song if you're using it against Lamont. You can't.
Right, because Lamont moved his company down south.
Yeah.
And so
he's down with
he's
the South
really
now.
Yeah. And so it's
he's down with the Confederates now.
Right. The commercial is in total poor taste. It shouldn't. It's. I don't know who put the commercial together, what they were thinking, but it's not well done. It does more damage to the person using it. It does more damage to Stefanowski.
But everybody's damaged who hears that.
They're only damaged if they understand the song. A lot of young people. I've met people who had never heard of the NAACP. I've met young people.
Black people.
Yes.
Well, you know,
who have no idea. I've had them as interns. And I'm going back 10 years. As interns, I says, well, you know, today we're gonna do something around with the NAACP. So what's that? The NAACP. What's that? The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Never heard of it.
No idea, huh?
Had no idea, none. So to presuppose that folk understand the anthem and the words, nevertheless, that go along with the song, because if you don't know the words to the song,
then it's just music.
It's just music. It'd be like listening to Marilyn Manson. Yeah. You know, if you don't know who Marilyn Manson is, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have no idea who he is.
It's just some noise.
It's just noise. It only means something to people who have understanding of that, and he's not speaking to those people
who are conscious.
Right. You have to be real conscious because it's an old song. Now, does a dog whistle? Yeah. You drive up in the hinder parts of Connecticut and the dog whistle's being heard real loud.
Yeah, they identify with that.
Absolutely. You know, the number one station in Connecticut is Talk, a talk station, AM station, and it's extremely conservative. All of the talk stations doing very well are extremely conservative, and they're not conservative by accident. They're conservative because there's a constituency out there, and there's a consumer base that's willing to support them. You know, so that's what that is. Dr. Bowen, I have some good news for you.
I'm listening.
I am actually going to my daughter's school.
Oh.
I have become an involved parent.
Nice.
I've become an involved parent because I had a situation where my daughter had homework.
Okay.
And it was a math problem. And so she had like a one pager with the math problems on it. And so my wife and I are going over the math problem. And I said, well, there must be more to this. So, because it's homework.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for the first time in ever, I'm involved with the homework process. I don't do the homework process. And so I says, well, there must be, where's your textbook?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a textbook. How do you mean you don't have a textbook? There's got to be a textbook. The textbook is where the homework comes from. Did you go? You must have gone over this in the course of the day. The teacher said, just take this home and see what you can do with it. How is that possible? I mean, this is not simple math. This looks like algebra.
Right.
So I'm looking at it. I'm just come to find out it is algebra. Right. And so I'm saying, well, you can't assign homework. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Homework is supposed to be a means by which it reinforces what you went over during the day, or to kind of assess, did the lesson plan resonate? Did it situate? And so my wife was telling me, no, she's the educational expert in our house. So, she said, well, you could find out because there's a curriculum and meeting coming out. So I'm absolutely going. Because I have a problem about home. I think kids should have homework. I had homework. I think children should have homework. I think homework should be used to assess what the kid went over in the day. Now, there's many schools of thought on this, apparently. But I'm going to find out and voice my opinion as a parent. I can't speak to the other children in here. But my child better have homework.
So where's the textbook?
They don't have a textbook. I don't know. But I'm going to go find all that out on September the 22nd. I'm going to be that parent. I'm in the classroom. Now, this could be a dangerous thing because, I'm one of them all-in kind of people. And, I purposely don't get into certain things because I don't want to be the one that's all in because I'll be all in.
Just plan on taking notes, Dan. Just plan on taking notes. Plan on taking notes because this will add to our conversation. Because if it is, so no, check this out. Over the past several years, and probably over the past 20 years, we have been alerted to book bag drives, we've got back to school backpacks. And kids aren't given books. So what are they putting in their backpacks?
Lunch. No, lunch is free at school.
So my point is, right? So there's money and donations being made for backpacks that contain no books. Make it make sense to me. What am I missing? Book bags without books. Why? Why are we doing these drives? I mean, here's the thing, right? So if we're using tablets, if we're really using technology like we say we are, by the time they get to me, that I shouldn't have to teach them the foundations.
Right.
But there's a disconnect, because if it is that they're not given the actual physical books and they're not really being grounded in the technology, but they're going to college unprepared,
they're being set up to fail.
Somebody make that make sense to me.
They're being set up to fail, Dr. Maya. That's what Stan said.
Yes.
So here's the thing.
Where we are.
I would submit to that, Dr. Maya. I think that people are just going through the motions about the book bags, because there was a time where book bags were relevant. But right now, what's being put in them book bags a lot of times is the laptops or the computers that the kids are being allowed to use in some of the schools.
Tablet, yeah,
You know,
tablets.
that's the new
I
thing.
understand.
And a lot of the schools now are also using like in New Britain at the high school, a lot of the teachers were using more technology to teach. Like you didn't need a book because they had the book on the laptop. You know what I'm saying? So learning is different. So I think I agree with you. I think we have to start doing drives. I think that the focus, from what I hear you saying, then it has to be from book bags to technology. So
there should be
either a book or some type of technology device that they can use for school.
Well, the curriculum, I want to know where is the source material that backs up the homework?
Ooh,
that's all. A real simple question. Where's the source material that backs up the homework?
And how does my child access that?
How does the child access it, and how does the parent access it when the child has a question? Now, the child should have no question that isn't in whatever the source material is. If we got to read back to chapter 1, somehow where you are should refer back to that.
Right.
Or the advanced student or the student that you think may have some potential, you're going to jump them ahead. Because there's enough concept here that you, if you're good, could figure out chapter 4, even though we're in chapter 2. You look bright to me, and you have all the answers. So I'm going to give you a sheet now. Just bring it back to me and let me know what you think. All right. Now I can work with that.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't have the right answers to the questions I was asking, because, it seemed to me that she wasn't given anything to really, really support any of this.
I would love to see that one pager. I would like to challenge myself to see whether or not I would be able to actually manage that homework assignment too, once it is that you identify all the questions, the answers, hopefully, to the questions that you actually have. Because plain and simple, where's the source material?
I want to know where the source material is.
That's it. It's like one question, a one and done. I love it.
One hitter quitter.
One hitter quitter. Let's do it. And if there is I can't wait till we have a discussion related to this. This is going to be good. This is going to be good conversation.
I'll let you know.
Everybody needs a good dose. Everybody needs a good dose of morning talk. And this is where we find it.
Or it could be called a 2-punch fight. You punching the teacher with that question and the teacher hitting the floor right after.
As a teacher, check this out, Lou.
Yes.
As an instructor,
yes,
if I have the audacity to get offended or feel as though that's a jab at me, that means that I know that I'm not doing my job.
You're not prepared.
No, I'm just saying. So if I take offense for either my student or a parent coming and asking me, what's this all about? That means that I'm guilty of something.
If you feel some type of way,
it's
the same thing.
Think about that.
But it's funny that that's how we started the conversation.
Absolutely.
Because you started the conversation questioning the veracity of the information that's being put out by Hartford Public Schools. And we made the full circle. Now we're right back to that.
Absolutely.
Questioning the veracity.
Source material. What's the source material for
what is the source material? So check this out. K intervened $3.3 million contract for tutoring that comes from the state of Texas. Where are they right now in terms of having met or fulfilled the contractual obligations to the Hartford Public School System and the students that they were supposed to tutor?
They haven't even started.
Oh, ouch. $3.3 million, huh? We couldn't find in-state, local Hartford County area tutors where we could have had the tutoring in person. Is that what we're saying? Obviously.
Here's another term that I would urge our audience to get familiar with. Just like I shared the term earlier, racial battle fatigue.
Ooh.
You share the term today, the micro and the macro aggression. So the other term that I would share with the audience is oh man, now it slipped my mind. But racial battle fatigue is a term because because of what I stated earlier. Our students go through hundreds of these aggressions every day. And so what happens with it is, we talked about this. White people are so used to behaving like that, and we're so used to accepting that behavior that we normalize it. So we normalize in our own trauma. So we have to be very, very careful with that.
Well, but Lou, there are people that are black and brown that are co-signing on the same type of thing.
And those are the worst.
Micro and macro aggressions.
Those are the worst ones. They're protecting
all us skin folk and kinfolk.
You better believe that.
The thing is that if we take the racial outward complexities out of this, take it out. For example, just take it out. If we deal with the human beings that are dispensing macro and microaggressions on our children, then that's where the issue is. Address the human being that's doing it, not their race or ethnicity. Yes. Because if it is that you're in education and you have the nerve to actually come at a kid and or parent or guardian in any way that is not embracing, inviting, and positive, then you, sir, you, ma'am, are the problem. You don't need to be in education if you're not there to make sure that the best is going to be produced in said environment. I'm just saying.
Well, I think you're saying you're saying correctly. I mean, because if kids, everyone may want the job, and that's cool. It's laudable. You should get a gold star and a chocolate chip cookie. But unfortunately, this is not. You don't have the right mind. This is not a good job for you. It's just not a good job for you. So you're not a good fit here. You should be in some other line of work. Then that's good. Everyone ain't right for every job, and that from teaching to doctoring to flying airplanes to being a Navy SEAL to being a home help aide. Everyone is not good at all. If you don't have patience, you shouldn't be in home health care. You just shouldn't be in home health care.
I completely agree.
Because you don't have the temperament for it.
You need compassion.
You need compassion. I remember people were asking me, well, Stan, you need to run for city council. I said, oh, no. I don't have the temperament. I don't have the temperament. I can't. I can't do the whole, we're going to go round and round and round and round about an issue. You all figure out what the issue is. Tell me what you want done. I get it. I'm good at executing things. All right. Because I get frustrated over roundabout. Where are we going to put this? What should we spend the money on this? I don't care. The money is to get folk help. So find someone to help and call me. And then that's when we can go. So everyone doesn't have the temperament for everything. Now, teachers that don't have kids first, family first, shouldn't be in the building. They should not be in the building. There's some teachers should be fired just on general cause. But unfortunately, You can't. And not every administrator is a good administrator. Some of them are the worst people on the planet, but they got promoted out of where they were. And that's how they wound up being in administration or in charge of something.
That's the same thing that the Catholic Church did.
Before we go, check this out. So recently, a administrator, I want to say he was either a principal or vice principal, put on the hat or role of being a ninth grader to see what the day in the life of a ninth grader consisted of. So I think he did even a day or either a week, just to get a sense of what it is that a ninth grader would experience, right? Now imagine, and this reminds me of Undercover Boss.
Love
so
that.
Imagine what it is that he took away from that experience, and based on doing it, how it is that he will champion for policy changes related to said experience as a ninth grader.
That's beautiful.
I think everybody should actually step into other people's shoes for at least a day to find out what it is that they go through before they start really and truly just leveling down the heavy hand in terms of policies, right? Walk the day in somebody's shoes.
I can't
see how those policies change.
I can't remember who the superintendent was, but they had in Hartford. They had principal for a day. Do you remember principal for a day?
Yeah, of course.
I was one of the principals for a day, and it was eye opening. You were principal for a day, and you also had a student who was like, I think, the vice principal, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. And we went around. Now that we went around with the principal, but the principal let the two of us call all of the shots and make all the decisions relative to,
Yeah.
And we went around, and there was all kinds of people, just average folk from around Hartford, that got to see what went on in the schools. But it was a great way to pull people in. And so you have some administrators who are very open and inviting and then back that up with an action. And you have others who, people manage differently.
They run in prison.
Some that go to prison.
They run in the prison, Stan. They got visiting hours at only at certain times of the day and during the week. And you can't be on the premises because you get arrested, man.
The warden is setting all the rules. The only thing is that they don't strip search you.
Well, that's not true either, because we've had instances. But listen, I just want to keep a couple things alive because we want to know about them. And this whole thing with Chris Dukes and Colangelo, we want to keep that alive because we want to see him go to jail for covering up. And anybody that was involved with him, they're coming for you. Just wait. They're coming. And also a shout out to a lot of our great leaders, Eugenio Caro, Lou Brown, people that are not living in Hartford that we miss a lot now, like Chuck Cummings and Jackie Bethea. They down south now doing their thing. And then Cleve Royster, the great Cleve Royster and his wife Jackie, shouting y'all out today. And to all our families and our kids, man, I want to wish blessings upon you. And may you have an incredible rest of the week. May you succeed and be happy. Peace, family. Thank you so much.
Dr. Bowen.
Yes, final thoughts. Speak your mind in order for you to be heard. And don't let fear stop you from doing it. Become the courageous individual that you are. Because anything that goes unvoiced is something that actually needs to be voiced in order to get some corrective measures taken care of. Have a beautiful day. Peace, everybody.
All right, my friends, we're out of time. We'll see you next time. You all have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.
Another